There comes a time in every man's life when words fail, when strength is gone, and then the noise of the world drowns the still small voice that once guided us. In those sacred moments, the Spirit begins to whisper a cry that only heaven understands. Restore my soul. It is not a cry of defeat, but of surrender, a longing to return to the place where His presence was enough, where mercy spoke louder than judgment, and where grace carried us through seasons we could not explain. You see, the soul can be weary even when the body is strong. There are burdens we do not talk about, battles that do not leave visible scars, and seasons that demand more than endurance. They demand renewal. And it is in those moments that God calls us to stillness, not to punish us, but to realign us. For every restoration begins with recognition, and every encounter begins with hunger. Grace is not earned, it is accessed. Mercy is not deserved, it is received. And the seasons of God are not accidents, they are divine appointments for transformation. When your soul learns to discern His timing, what was once broken begins to find rhythm again. What was once silent begins to sing again. So tonight, lift your eyes beyond your weariness. Let your heart return to the altar. For there is a wind of renewal blowing across weary hearts. The Spirit of God is saying, come and I will restore your soul. Come and I will lift the weight you were never meant to carry. Come, for this is the season of grace, the season of mercy, and the season of restoration. The cry of every soul is restoration. No matter how strong, successful, or spiritual we may appear, there comes a moment when the weight of life presses too heavily on the heart. Responsibilities multiply, expectations increase, and slowly the quiet fire within begins to dim. The smile remains, but the strength fades. The hands still move, but the spirit grows weary. It is in these moments that the soul begins to whisper a sacred prayer that no one can hear but God. Restore me. This cry is not born out of weakness. It is born out of awareness. Awareness that we were never designed to run on our own strength. That divine presence was meant to be our fuel, and that peace was meant to be our resting place. There is something deeply powerful about the heart that knows when it is empty. Many go on performing, serving, and appearing whole, while inside they are running on fumes. But the soul that recognizes its dryness positions itself for divine renewal. For restoration is not for the proud, it is for the humble. For those who dare to admit that they have come to the end of themselves. It is the cry of David after the wilderness, the yearning of Elijah beneath the juniper tree. The silent prayer of a believer who knows that no sermon, no song, and no success can substitute for the touch of God. When God restores a soul, He does not merely refill it, He revives it. He breathes life into tired dreams and brings freshness to what had become routine. Restoration is not about returning to what was lost, it is about awakening to what still remains. Sometimes God allows exhaustion to expose dependence, not to punish us, but to remind us where our true strength lies. The cry for restoration is the beginning of transformation. So when your spirit feels heavy and your faith seems faint, do not silence that cry. Let it rise before heaven, for God listens to the sound of surrender. And when He answers, He does not give you more things, He gives you more of Himself. And in that moment, the weary soul finds its rest once again in the presence of the one who restores all things. Grace and mercy are not just doctrines we recite or concepts we discuss. They are living realities, divine systems that hold up the frail hearts of men. When life exposes your limitations, when your best efforts still fall short, it is grace that lifts you. Mercy does not excuse failure, it rescues purpose. Grace is the empowering presence of God that enables you to become what you could never be by yourself. And mercy is the tender heart of God that shields you from what your mistakes deserve. Both are gifts, not rewards. And until a man understands this, he will keep striving in his own strength, unaware that what he truly needs is already available at the throne of grace. Every man, no matter how spiritual, will encounter moments when his wisdom fails, when his plans collapse, and when his faith feels too small. It is in such seasons that grace steps in, not as a backup plan, but as the main foundation that holds us together. Grace teaches dependence. It teaches that power is perfected in weakness. Mercy, on the other hand, reveals the nature of God's love. It is His willingness to reach into the dust of our failures and still call us His own. When you taste mercy, pride dies and gratitude begins to live. We often think strength is proven by how long we can stand, but heaven measures strength by how quickly we surrender. To access grace, you must first accept that you cannot earn it. To receive mercy, you must first acknowledge that you need it. God does not resist weakness, He resists pride. And sometimes His greatest act of love is not in giving us what we ask for, but in withholding it until we are humble enough to receive it rightly. Grace and mercy are the twin lifelines of every destiny. Without them, success becomes arrogance and failure becomes despair. But when they flow together, They balance a man. Grace pushes him forward and mercy keeps him grounded. In the end, it is not the most gifted that endure, but those who have learned to live daily by the strength of grace and the safety of mercy. Every destiny operates by seasons, and the wisdom of life is hidden in the ability to discern those seasons. Nothing in God's kingdom happens by accident. There are divine timings assigned to every rising, every manifestation, and every moment of preparation. The tragedy is not in having a delayed season. It is in being unprepared when your season finally comes. Many times, people look at the success of others and wonder why life seems unfair. But what they do not see is the secret of alignment, the silent obedience that positioned them when their appointed time arrived. God works with patterns. Just as day follows night, so do seasons follow each other in the spirit. There are times when heaven calls you to be still, to wait, to build in silence. And there are other times when that same God says, arise and shine, for your light has come. The problem is that impatience makes us move before the season, and fear makes us hold back when the season comes. Both lead to frustration. Discernment, therefore, becomes the believer's greatest advantage. It helps you know when to sow, when to water, and when to reap. Every man who walked with God learned to honor his timing. Joseph endured the prison because he understood that the throne was not yet ready. David kept tending sheep even after being anointed king because the season for his manifestation had not come. There are moments when God hides you not to punish you, but to preserve you. He refines your character, deepens your roots, and teaches you dependence so that when the winds of elevation blow, you will not be shaken. When you understand seasons, envy dies. You stop comparing your path to another's because you realize that the same God who visited them will visit you in your appointed time. There is beauty in divine timing. There is power in waiting with faith. So if it seems silent right now, do not despair. The silence of God is not his absence, it is his preparation. And when your season finally comes, everything that was delayed will be delivered with acceleration. For in God's time, all things become beautiful. True transformation begins when the heart returns to its maker, not seeking blessings, but alignment. Many people come to God because they want change, but very few come because they want him. Yet the deepest encounters are reserved for those who pursue his presence, not his power. The truth is, a heart that only seeks what God can do will eventually grow weary, but a heart that seeks who God is will never run dry. Transformation is not about behavior modification. It is about heart realignment. When the heart finds its way back to its true source, everything else begins to take shape naturally. God does not transform men from the outside in. He works from the inside out. He changes desires before he changes circumstances. That is why the first miracle of restoration is always internal. A renewed mind, a softened heart, a revived hunger. Sometimes he delays the external breakthrough because he wants to ensure that the heart is ready to handle it. Blessings that come without transformation can become burdens, but when your heart is aligned, even little becomes much. There is a kind of peace that only comes from surrender. When you stop trying to fix everything on your own and simply yield to the process, grace begins to flow. The heart that is aligned with God no longer fights his will, it flows with it. You begin to understand that not every delay is denial and not every closed door is rejection. Some doors remain shut because God knows you're not yet ready to carry what's behind them. Alignment teaches patience, it teaches trust. To return to the maker is to return to purpose. It is to remember why you were created, to reconnect with divine intention. It is realizing that the goal is not success without God, but success in God. The world measures transformation by visibility, but heaven measures it by obedience. The more you align with God, the clearer your path becomes. And in that alignment, strength returns, clarity is restored, and your steps begin to mirror his will. True transformation is not found in striving, it is found in surrender. When the heart bows, destiny rises. Worship is more than a song, it is a language of the Spirit. It is the ladder that allows broken men to ascend and touch the heart of God. Long before the words are spoken, worship begins as a posture of humility, of surrender, of awareness that without him, we are nothing. True worship does not start on a stage. It begins in the secret place where tears mix with gratitude, where hearts whisper what lips cannot express. It is not the rhythm or melody that moves heaven. It is the sincerity of the heart behind it. When a man truly worships, he invites God to take his rightful place again. There are dimensions of God that can never be accessed through preaching or prayer alone. They open only through worship. Worship is the key that unlocks intimacy. It breaks pride, it softens the hardest hearts, and it silences the noise of the world. When you lift your voice in worship, you are not reminding God of who he is. You are reminding your soul of where it belongs. The weary soul finds rest not in explanation but in adoration. For every time you worship, you exchange your weakness for his strength, your confusion for his peace, and your burden for his presence. There is a reason why even in heaven, worship never ceases. The angels see new dimensions of God every moment, and each revelation draws a fresh song from their hearts. That is what happens when a believer truly surrenders in worship. You see him in a new light, and suddenly your problems seem smaller, your fears seem quieter, and your faith becomes alive again. Worship realigns your heart with eternity. It reminds you that life is not about achievements or applause, but about communion with the one who created you. When worship rises, heaven responds, chains break, hearts heal, and clarity is restored. Many battles are not won by warfare, but by worship. For when you worship, you invite God to fight for you. You may enter heavy, but you will not leave the same. In the sound of worship, the presence of God descends, and in that presence, the soul that was weary begins to live again.